Welcome everyone to today's episode of Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. I'm Sally Ganga from College Coach. And just for an intro, I want to say hi to all the high school juniors out there. You should all be visiting colleges right now. So I'm encouraging you to do so. If for some reason you can't travel, remember every college at this point has virtual visits. So at least be doing that. I personally just came back from a visit to the College of New Jersey and really loved it. I think it's kind of a little undiscovered, or not undiscovered, but not as well-known gem as it should be. All right, this is going to be a remarkable show. For any of you who are actually watching this on video, you'll see that I've got three women with me. And I'm just super excited because these are the deans of admission from Babson College, Olin College, and Wellesley College to tell us about the BOW, or BOW Consortium. So we have Courtney Minden from Babson, and she is not only the dean, she's also their vice president of enrollment management. We have Emily Roper-Doughton from Olin College of Engineering and Jessica Riker from Wellesley. Welcome, everyone. Jessica, did I say your name right?
It's actually Ricker, but it's okay. I'll take it.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. All right, so all your colleges are very distinct and different. You're all colleges, but you're not sort of a traditional liberal arts colleges, liberal arts and sciences colleges. So I'd actually love you one at a time to kind of introduce yourself and describe, or I should say, introduce your institution. So let's start with that. And then what we're going to do is we'll be talking about how you function together as a consortium, which I think is really exciting. So Courtney, you're at the top of my screen. So why don't you go ahead and start?
All right, so as Sally said, I am the dean at Babson College. And so Babson is a school for entrepreneurial leadership. So we teach business from entrepreneurial lens. We have a student body of about 3,000 undergraduates and about 1,000 more graduate students at Babson for their MBA or master's in specialized business. And we are a full residential college, students who live on campus all 4 years. And the curriculum is based on both a business quantitative based curriculum as well as liberal arts. Half of our classes are actually taught in the liberal arts.
Okay. All right. And I think that's an important note that we should go back to why that's important, because I talk to a lot of students who say, why do I have to study history? It's not relevant, so we should definitely come back to that. All right, Emily, maybe you could introduce yourself, your institution next.
Sure. So Olin College of Engineering is a school that focuses on engineering, as our name tells you. And I always have the pleasure of being the youngest and smallest college on any panel. We are small on purpose. We're actually only 350 students total. And that's because of the educational model that we have. So Olin was founded to really kind of shake up the traditional engineering paradigm that sort of was built upon math, science, and then you get to do engineering. And Olin flips that to sort of say, we can learn the math and science through the engineering. And so it's a project-based curriculum. Students are working collaboratively. We really want them to be modeling in the classroom how they will work later on as engineers. And that means together in terms of interdisciplinary ways. So it's a really unique experience. I often, when I'm talking to students, will say it's kind of the college for the makers and the breakers. We're looking for students who like to build, they like to solve problems, but we also really think about engineering as kind of the lever you pull to make a difference in the world. So really thinking not so much about just technical widgets, how do you make the next best kind of gadget, but how do you really think about engineering as being what can solve bigger societal issues, and whether that's individually, how do we help senior citizens have more independence for longer, or big issues like climate change.
Okay. All right, great. Jess, how about you? Tell us about Wellesley.
Yeah. So Wellesley College is one of the remaining sister colleges, right? So we're a women's college. We were founded in the 1800s at a time when society didn't believe that women could handle, right, a rigorous academic environment. And so we've been proving them wrong since the 1800s. And so our 2,400 students are in the liberal arts and sciences, about a third in STEM. Econ is a really popular major for us. But we're an environment that's unique because every college government president, the club presidents, the captain of the soccer team, it's all women. And in fact, our president and all but one member of the president's senior leadership cabinet identify as women. So what we are is we're empowering women to go out and to break glass ceilings by having this environment where they get to prepare for it in their undergraduate years. So it's a really exciting part of the BOW collaborative and the way we all complement each other in some different ways.
Okay. And so I'm just going to follow up quickly, Jess, with what would you say to people who say, well, the real world isn't just women, although I love it that on my screen today, that would belie that, right? Like there are sometimes all women and that's not a bad thing. But what would you say? Because I hear that when I recommend women's colleges, they say, both, they got to get used to men as if somehow men aren't around them every day anyway.
Yeah. So Sally, I would send them out and say, you need to go look at a women's college and come back with some reason why you wouldn't consider it as an institution other than that it's a women's college. And my response to why our education is so important would be something actually one of our students said at an admitted student panel last weekend, which is that women don't come to Wellesley so they can learn how to adapt to the world, right? They actually come to Wellesley to learn how to change the world, right? So they're learning how to be leaders, to speak up in class, right? And to, use their knowledge in a meaningful way so that when that moment of, oh my gosh, I have to actually tell my boss that there's something that, isn't correct here, or a moment to sort of step up and speak out for someone else, they have no fear because they've been practicing for that the entire 4 years.
Okay, great. All right. So let's go back to Courtney at Babson. Why are the liberal arts important for business?
Well, I think we can all agree, we've all worked with somebody, for somebody, or had somebody work for us. And it's not really all about the quantitative skills. It's really learning the depth of an education that goes down into how to be a good cultural citizen, how to be bilingual, how to understand the environment and the sustainability behind the real estate or the science. And it really, cross-disciplinary has been a sort of a top descriptor of major colleges and universities for decades now. And I think this is a living, breathing example of that. And, a few years ago, a student of mine actually said to me, we all say that it's really the business at Babson that gets you a job, but it's the liberal arts that gets you the promotion, because you're able to thrive in a working environment and really stretch your knowledge through understanding the liberal arts.
Yeah, one of the things that I have to tell students a lot is that they should keep going in a world language. I mean, you mentioned kind of global issues as being important. They're like, well, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to be a business major. Why is that important? And I'm like, I can promise you it is. Do you think as a business person, you're not going to be interacting with people from other countries who speak other languages, cross-cultural communication? This is important.
Right. And colleges and universities are not local, they're global. And in order to go out into the world, you're not just going to get a job where you stay in the same town and speak to the same people all the time. I mean, chances are you're actually, whether you're at Babson, Olin, or Wellesley, you will be spending some time abroad and professionally, and to understand the language, really I keep saying this again and again to our students, it's beyond the language, it's the culture. When you're negotiating a deal and you really miss a big cultural tell, the deal's off. And it could be bad manners that call off the deal, or not understanding the ramifications of an idea in terms of its sustainability, or again, I keep going back to real estate. You're not a great real estate developer if you don't understand the environmental impact of your buildings. So understanding that environmental science piece is really important as well.
Well, and I think all the businesses that are household names these days are global.
Right.
There's really no such thing anymore as a household name business that isn't global, I think. So,
right.
Yeah. All right. So Emily, I'm curious about, you're welcome to comment on some of the things we've already been talking about, but I found it really interesting what you said about sort of learning engineering, like before the math and the physics. So kind of tell me a little bit more about how that works.
Absolutely. So the Olin curriculum really starts out with a number of interdisciplinary courses where the students are doing projects through which they learn the math and science that holds engineering up, right? So most of the time the curriculum has you learn those skills first. So you learn kind of the calculus and physics as independent subjects. And then later, maybe as a junior, you're starting to put them together as engineering. And so we really changed it around partially to have students thinking about or thinking in an engineering mindset, identifying as an engineer, as that type of problem solver from the beginning. And so as an example, they'll take a class in their first semester called Introduction to Sensors, Instrumentation, and Measurement. And so the class is a bit of physics, a bit of electrical engineering, a little bit of math, maybe there's a little programming in there. So it's all of these different components that they might have elsewhere taken separately, but they're taking them together because ultimately they're going to have to build a circuit that measures something. And they have to understand how these things work together. So understanding why the math is what it is because of what they're trying to do. And so really trying to instill from the beginning how an engineer should approach the problem at hand. And so part of the Olin model too is related to not just doing the engineering first or doing, only doing the engineering and learning those other things with it, is actually a parallel really to Babson. And I think part of the reason why Olin decided to be a partner in this space and be right next to Babson and to Wellesley is that, similar to what Courtney was saying, we don't think you can be an engineer in the world without understanding the people you're engineering for, the systems in which you're doing that engineering, the economy in which you're going to try to bring your product to market. And so really thinking about, we will all be better for having that greater depth and context. And so we've had a lot of conversations at Olin about some emerging courses in context and ethics, or there's one called Context and Consequences of Engineering, and really thinking about what are the unintended consequences of engineers moving too quickly, sort of the hubris of engineering of sometimes we can fix it, and actually sort of stopping and saying, but is this the thing that we should fix? Is that, are there unintended consequences of what we're going to do? Asking those questions so that you're getting to engineering the right thing in the right way, as opposed to sort of moving too quickly without that context that can give you those cultural cues as to what you really should be doing.
Right. And yeah, is this actually going to work? If it doesn't work for the humans it's supposed to be helping?
Right.
I one time had a kind of a debate with a friend of mine about how I didn't think a particular, I mean, in this case, it was software, and he was a Microsoft engineer, highly successful, and I said, well, I don't think I would use that because it doesn't feel intuitive to me, and I'm not a tech person, but supposedly that's who it's for, right? And he said, well, you would learn. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't, because I wouldn't have anybody to make me learn it. So I wouldn't learn it, It was such an arrogant response,
Yeah, user-oriented design is important. Having your user at the fore of what you're doing, not as the afterthought of like, no, I'm going to convince you. Right. This is the thing you need, but actually saying, I'm going to spend the time to ask you the right kinds of questions to figure out what's intuitive for you in the way you want to use it.
Exactly. And this was so notable to me because this is a nice guy. I'm friends with him. He's a good person. He actually did go to a liberal art. He went to Reed College, which is my alma mater. So he should know better of all people, but he still had just, I guess, been in that environment for so long. So I think this is kind of the perfect place then to segue into how the consortium works together. Like, what were the origins of it? And, what are some of the really cool things? We've got a lot of time, so I really want to hear like all the details, all the cool stories. Is there one of you who wants to start with the origin story, who kind of knows it better than others?
I don't really know that. It's pretty much all three of us. I feel like, Jess, if anyone were to know it, you would know the facts of it. I don't know how it came about.
What do you know, Jess?
Emily volunteered, right? Because I think really what I'll lead with, and then I'll pass it to Emily, is that really the genesis started when Olin was founded, right? So we couldn't be bow without the O, right?
Yeah, so Olin's origin story really is a really interesting one of pulling them together, right? So Olin exists because of the F.W. Olin Foundation, same name as Olin College, but the F.W. Olin Foundation used to give building grants to colleges. So there's something like 78 buildings on 66 campuses across the country that were funded by Olin. So the Olin Foundation was really trying to help innovate and advance education for 50 years. And then in the mid-90s, they had a little bit of a crisis of conscience of, by putting a building on a campus, are we actually advancing education or just putting a building on a campus? And so how could they think about ways to have a greater impact in higher education and in an innovative way? And so they kind of paid attention to a National Science Foundation study that came out that was really critical of engineering at the time. And so Frank Olin himself was an engineer. And so the foundation was really keen to say, here's an opportunity for us, but where should we be? And really sort of thinking about, where do you put a new engineering school that's going to have a very specific focus and that's going to be small and undergraduate only on purpose? We need partners. We need to be in the right place to capitalize on incredible institutions that we can create an environment. And so they were looking at some of the models of other consortium and around the country and saying, okay, there's a good one here in Western Mass. What's good that we can take from there? What's happening in Claremont? What can we take from there and think about that? And so as the foundation was starting to think about kind of their top 3 locations, it became more and more clear that the partnership with a world-class liberal arts college and the school in the country for entrepreneurial leadership was where we needed to be because of the education that we were going to offer, that our students were going to be taking arts, humanities, social science, and entrepreneurship, sometimes with us, but oftentimes with our partners. That how do we create, so how does Olin succeed at what we want to do? It's by garnering the right resources and creating the right partnerships. And so Olin showed up and we were chartered in 1997. We didn't have a graduating class until 2006. Took a little bit of time to get the campus built because we were from the ground up. We didn't inhabit buildings that existed, but we share a campus boundary with Babson. If you've got a good arm, you can chuck a softball over there. We're that close. Wellesley's less than 2 miles away. And so creating this opportunity for cross-registration, the student populations to have an expanded footprint. We certainly at 350 could sometimes use a little bit more of a social outlet among the others. So put us all together, and I think we're a little over 5,000 maybe. So kind of a nice opportunity.
I think it's a great opportunity for all of our not only students, faculty and staff as well, all of our communities to really be true to our individual mission. So mission for the women's education, engineering education, entrepreneurial leadership, and really own that, but also know that we can complement what we're so proud of, what we've achieved with the other 2. And I think their students really go into it really excited to take their entrepreneurial leadership brand and then go and interact with our other counterparts, because it just makes us all stronger. And I think I'm really seeing, in terms looking at the tea leaves of higher education and all the headwinds that we're facing, to survive, most colleges and universities are going to have to think about partnerships and pipelines. There's nowhere else to go on our physical campuses. The population is changing so drastically, particularly the domestic population, that it's going to be a game changer. The ability of schools to look across and see the opportunities to make their institutions stronger by sharing the pie.
And really by, as much as we're different, right, it's what we share, right, which Courtney and Emily have both alluded to, that we all really believe that the impact of the 4 years is amplified by being, living and learning in a community where you're surrounded by people from different walks of life, who speak different languages, who grew up in different locations, one who's, an entrepreneur, another who's an engineer, another who's an econ major, right? That the diversity in all of its multifaceted shapes and forms helps us think critically about what we know, how we know it, alluding to Courtney's mention earlier, hey, if you don't have the cultural context for how to pitch or present something, you may fall flat on your face, even if you have the best idea. And so that transcends in a philosophical way to the way Bao thinks about, facilitating faculty research and teaching projects across our campuses, really having interdisciplinary approaches within and across our 3 institutions. And so expanding the opportunities, not just for the students, right, who are with us for those four or so years, but for the faculty, for the community, so that the students are learning from these tremendous scholars who are themselves learning and growing all the time from the benefits of being in this really unique community.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I should have thought of this, but I kind of didn't think about how the faculty would benefit as well from having these very different institutions nearby. So that's a great point. The other thing that I think is really interesting, as someone who went to a liberal arts and sciences college that wasn't part of this consortium, and I loved it, but I think I really I didn't realize how creative engineering and business could be. And I didn't take business seriously. And obviously I went into college admissions, like I have no regrets about my professions. But I think now, like, how great it might have been to go ahead and take a business class, or take, be exposed to engineering and see what kind of possibilities there might have been there. Is that, would you say, one of the kind of concrete benefits that your graduates get?
Oh, absolutely. My president likes to say that no matter what college or program major you graduate from, the day one after graduation, you're a business person because you got to market yourself to get a job. And his son is a music major. And he said his son had from Oberlin, and his son had works at Oberlin. His son had an epiphany and said, I have to sell myself. And so, but he loved music. Music was his vocation. But he's still every day saying he's learning aspects of engineering, aspects of liberal arts, just to stay contemporary.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about some kind of concrete examples of ways that, and we'll take a break soon, but we have a few more minutes. So like, what are some concrete examples of kind of projects that your colleges have done together?
There's one course, Affordable Design and Entrepreneurship, that's actually a joint class between the colleges. That is, it can be used as a capstone for our students, but it can also be used as a single semester course for students from the others. And it's one of the courses, I think, at least for us, that has the most even distribution of students across the 3 campuses, maybe a little bit more Olin students in it. But it's essentially a class where student teams partner with communities that are suffering from extreme levels of poverty. And the teams together have to think about how do you alleviate that poverty in some way that is sustainable, that is true to the culture and community that's there. And so these are multi-year projects that students will, they use a bus metaphor where the bus is always going toward the solution, and different people will get on and off the bus at different times, and it keeps advancing the whole time. And so some of them are location bound. There are a number of that are international. We've had a longstanding project in Ghana where they're working on food processing technologies and entrepreneurial opportunities for women in that community to make and sell the technology to process the cassava root, as well as the actual having a business where the processed cassava is the thing that they're selling. Some of them are less location based. There was one that was on one of the highest causes of infant mortality in the developing world is hypothermia. And so a cross-functional team looking at how do you create an affordable, based on a renewable energy source, portable incubator. And so the students are getting this really deep, real world connected opportunity to make impact. And those projects certainly benefit from multiple different minds coming together. It's one of my favorite examples of what we do in terms of a course experience for students, where the benefit of having those multiple different minds and perspectives in the room is incredible.
I would think that it would be so much more enjoyable for the students too, to be working on this real world problem, So I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, I was also just going to say, this isn't a course, but my favorite aspect, I'm a little biased, is it's on our campus, is 3 years ago, we opened the Foundry, which is a 3-college makerspace. So it's located on the Babson campus on the Olin side, but it is actually staffed by Olin, Wellesley, and Babson. We have student captains who work within the Foundry, and it's got everything from a test kitchen to a 3D printer. Some of our students used it to make pillows one day when they were just bored on a Wednesday night. And
why not?
They found one of my colleagues' office depressing, so they brought him the pillows for his couch. But it's a creative outlet. It's a way to, again, I think there's no better example of bringing the 3 minds together in order to, come out with something really cool that one wouldn't necessarily be able to produce.
Yeah, the Foundry during the pandemic, they ended up making face shields, right? This was not the intended use or purpose of the Weissman Foundry, but my favorite example that a student shared with me, right? And there's no fashion, right, major at any of our 3 institutions, but I think it was in 2019, there was a bow fashion show at the Foundry, and 36 designers, I think it was, were showcasing creativity, right? There was a full runway and wearables and accessories and maybe not the fashion you might think of, right? But a really open, creative, innovative entrepreneur, right? So all the design, all the liberal arts, right? Like all of the different things that we value at our three institutions on showcase, right? For everyone to participate and take a part of. So.
Yeah, they actually had it again on Saturday night.
Oh, they did? Okay, see, I must have missed that.
Wow. I'd like to attend that fashion show, I have to say.
It's on YouTube.
All right, yeah, I'll check it out. When I worked at Whittier College for a while, and they had a great art department that would actually like do weird like, you know, make the dress with the safety pins and things like that. And I can only imagine that you guys are your students are even more creative. So, all right, I think we're going to go ahead and take a break now, and then we will be back very shortly.